Welcome everyone to this short tutorial about the DV20 and the traffic pattern procedures at Tököl Airport in Hungary, Lima Hotel Tango, Lima. Today we're going to be doing the tutorial in Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra, and we are currently parked somewhere between the Pan and Air hangar and the Airwin hangar, which is another flight school also located in Tököl. All right, so we need to have a quick overview of the airport. So I have this chart right here, and we are currently here by the hangar. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw that for you. Let's pick a better color and make it a little bit maybe, okay, here we go. And we are currently here by the hangar. And just to explain the layout of the airport real quick for you, uh, there's long taxiways on this side. The airport actually has two like hangars everywhere, and it's a huge airport. But on our side, we have taxiway Gulf 1, as you can see here, which extends from the hangar all the way to here, followed by taxiway Gulf, which is a very short one right here. And this is holding point Gulf for runway 32. There's also another taxiway called Gulf 2 that comes also this way and meets Gulf 1 at this point, and we will see that in just a second on the airport layout. On the other side, we have taxiways Alpha 1. As you can see, these are exit Alpha 2, there's Alpha 3, and there's also Alpha 4. But we're not going to pretty much deal with any of those. The maximum ones we're going to deal with probably Alpha 2 or possibly Alpha 3, but definitely not Alpha 4. And taxiway Alpha extends all the way on the other side to take you back to holding point Alpha 1. So pretty much for runway 32, the holding points are Gulf on the east side and Alpha 1 on the west side. Since we're located at the Pan and Air hangar, which is here, we usually take Gulf 1 to some place here called the Gulf Bay, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. And that's when we do our run up and we get ready for takeoff before taxiing to holding point Gulf. All right, so Gulf 1, as you can see, is a very long taxiway, and it only allows for one aircraft at a time. So before entering Gulf 1, you need to hear or get some sort of reassurance from Tököl radio that Gulf 1 is free. So you can taxi all the way either to the Gulf Bay or the holding point Gulf, or backwards all the way to the hangar. So let's try to put this in perspective. Here is an overview of the Tököl airfield with the landmarks that you can use to distinguish different parts of the traffic pattern, for example. Okay, so going up here, you can see that this long taxiway is Gulf 1. That's the one we use to go from the hangar to the Gulf Bay, which is the area right there. That's where we do the run up and get ready for departure. It can fit 3 or 4 small aircraft actually in that part right there. This is Gulf 2. And as you taxi on Gulf 1, you need to give way or yield to aircraft coming from Gulf 2. And as you turn around here, if we turn around and take a look, and you'll see that this is Alpha 1, this is Alpha 2, this is Alpha 3, and that's Alpha 4. And in the back, that is the Alpha taxiway that connects all of them. And we can pretty much are going to use nothing beyond the taxiway Alpha 2, because after that, I mean, there's a bunch of hangars here, but most aircraft either come out of these hangars and taxi to Alpha 2 or taxi to Alpha 1. Right, so we pretty much never use Alpha 3 or Alpha 4 that you see right there. Okay, so some of the landmarks that are very useful for the traffic pattern, those chimneys, I don't know, I mean, they look like chimneys to me, so I call them the chimneys. Right there are very considered a very good landmark to pretty much find the airport. You just need to find those chimneys and then look on the opposite side of the Danube. Okay, here's the Danube. On the opposite side, you can locate the airport easily. Also on this side right here, here is that antenna right there. There's an antenna that you can see. It's also one of the major landmarks used, for example, for when we turn base runway 14, which I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you later. All right. So this is an overview of the airport. Here's runway 14 is this way, and this is the threshold for runway 32. Okay, 32. And this is runway 14. And just bear in mind that runway 14
is also has a displaced threshold, as you can see. So landing is after the displaced threshold, and runway 32 also has a displaced threshold. So for touch and goes, we touch here, pretty much close to alpha 2, but for full stop landings we are allowed to actually make the full stop or touchdown at the threshold, original threshold of runway 32. All right, over there's a Tesco. It's also pretty much modeled, so that's really good. But definitely, this is a good rendering of the airfield and the surroundings, as you can see, especially those chimneys, and that's the refinery. There's a refinery back there. I'm going to see when we fly, as we turn left, for example, on the crosswind runway 32 and downwind, and I'll show you that in just a second.
Okay, well, very good. It looks like we got a good perspective of the airport right now and the taxiways, etc. So let's go ahead and go through the procedures real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out the checklist that you have received. And I'm going to follow this checklist. So please have it open with you right now because I cannot have it while I'm doing the procedures in the aircraft. I cannot have it visible. I'm going to read through it. So have it in front of you as I'm going through the items one by one. All right, so what is the difference between this aircraft and our aircraft? Well, I'll tell you something. We do have two G5s in our plane. I'm not sure if it's two or one. I kind don't remember, to be honest with you, but I do believe we have I think two G5 units, possibly, or even one. And in that case, we don't have the typical gyro equipment, but there's something advanced with AHRS, as you can see. Today I set the skies to be clear and the QNH to be 1013, and it's set to 1013. And the airport uh, elevation is about 325 feet or so. And I just want to show you, I'm going to show you a layout of what it looks like on the map with a satellite view in just a second. Okay, and here we are. This is our airport. As you can see, it doesn't really show you anything about the taxiways or their numbering whatsoever, but you do have the chart that has been given to you. And here we go. We can see here's Gulf 1. I'm going to use now the marker. Here's Gulf 1 taxiway. This is Gulf. This is Gulf 2. And here are all the alpha taxiways that we saw from before. All right, here we go. Airport elevation about 328 feet, as I have told you before. And it's not Tököl info, it's actually Tököl radio, 127.56. I saw that in the presentation that you had. They said Tököl info in the communication file. It's Tököl radio. All right, so let's get back again to the checklist and talk about what we need to do in the aircraft. Right, before engine start checklist, pre-flight check has to be completed, rudder pedals adjusted and locked. All right, how does that work? Well, we do have a cable right here in the middle. This is where you pull the cable from, and you can adjust the length of the rudder pedals based on, of course, your height to be comfortable and to have full control that you can push the rudder all the way right or left, and also complete control of the brakes. All right, belts fastened. You can put the seat belts on. They're a little bit of a pain. The aircraft is very small, but we'll do that together. Canopy has to be closed. Uh, Currently, obviously, it's closed, as you can see. Okay, and the throttle friction device. You can adjust the throttle friction device. It's somewhere on the right here. Based on your comfort level, how you don't want them to be moving or change parameters like manifold pressure or RPM while you're flying, but they pretty much adjust it for you. I've rarely had to use them, to be honest with you. Throttle has to be idle, okay? So we have, this is the carb heat on the left, then we have the throttle and the prop. So here's the throttle idle, and propeller has to be full forward. Carb heat is off right now, and it's the opposition, it's off. Here's on and off positions for the carb heat. The fuel shutoff valve has to be open, and it's on this side, on the pilot and command side on the left. If the pilot and command is the pilot on the left side, not the flight instructor, in that case, you just feel it with your hand or your fingers, and you'll know that it's in the horizontal position, that you know that it's in the open position. All right, and the electric master, we turn that on now. Okay, here's the battery master off and on. It's not going to look exactly the same in the aircraft, but we pretty much know the drill. Electric master on. And then in that case, you need to check that the generator of fuel pressure lights have to be illuminated. Okay, what is that? Here you go. So we have fuel pressure light is illuminated, and the low voltage for the, on the generator lights have to be illuminated. That means we're not charging the battery, and the fuel pressure is low. Engine's not running, and you'll have the fuel pump on. Okay, avionics master, make sure that it's off. Off. And after that, we go ahead now and insert the key. And we turn the strobe light on. This aircraft has pretty much only a strobe light, ACL, anti-collision light. That's like the beacon that you have to turn on before you start the engine, and you have to turn them off after you shut off the engine. Position lights and navigation lights, we don't usually use them in the daytime at all. And the landing light is the one we use, obviously, when we, we're on the runway. Anytime we're on the runway, even taxiing, and of course for, takeoff and landing. Okay, so these are pretty much the lights that we have. So we're going to turn now the ACL light on. Fuel pump, we have to turn the fuel pump on, and there's a switch for it. Here we go. And when I turn the fuel pump on, the fuel pressure light has to disappear, and it did disappear, as you can see here, and you can hear the pump in the background. You're going to hear it. It's very, very loud. Okay, we're going to use the choke as required if it's the first startup in the morning. I'm going to show you how to do that, but now we're not going to use the choke. And make sure that the prop area is clear, and you're going to say clear prop, and we go ahead and start the engine. All right, so that was the before startup checklist, and right away after starting the checklist, we want to make sure that the starter warning light is off. Okay, and oil pressure has to be checked, has to be in the green. Oil pressure is in the green. Generator light is also out. That's also good, and low voltage light also disappeared. Make sure now the RPM is around 1,000. It is around 1,000, all right, from the throttle position. And we need to go ahead now and turn the fuel pump off, and the sound stops. We're good. We check the flaps now. We put them in the different positions. Take off, and you look right and left. Make sure that it's moving. Put it in the full position and check, and bring them back up again. All right, so that's done. Now avionics master on. Okay, avionics master on, and you set the nav and comm. We need to set the squawk to 7,000. Make sure that's squawk 7,000, and we said that the Tököl frequency is 127.56. And we have a primitive, simple comm device in the real aircraft. We don't have a Garmin unit. So we set the comms anyways. It allows you actually to monitor the standby frequency in the real aircraft while you're talking to one. So that's a good thing, but it's only one comm that is placed in the aircraft. All right, 127.56, that is Tököl radio is set. And then transponder is set. Nav needs to be set. Well, in that case, in the G5, you don't have to adjust this. But in this aircraft, we would have to probably take a look here. I think we are about 155 heading according to the compass. Yeah, about 155 or so. So we're going to have to adjust this guy. Oh, looks it's pretty adjusted for us. Okay, so it's set. But in the G5, you don't have to do this. All right, in that case, you're going to start noting the time before you taxi, and we're going to call now according to the procedures that we follow. We're going to call Tököl radio and request taxi. Remember, this is an uncontrolled airport. There are no clearances here. You're not going to get a clearance for anything. And you really have to be very vigilant of other traffic because you're going to hear most of the communication sometimes is in Hungarian. But no worries about that. I do have a built-in custom Stratix with an OGN receiver, and most aircraft have OGN transmitters, and I can see them on my in my electronic flight bag while we're flying for extra safety. All right, so going to go now to Tököl radio, and this is what we say. Tököl radio, good morning, Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra. You always like to be greeted first. It's not really a busy airport. You gotta respond back. You gotta tell you. They could respond to you by saying just good morning, and respond to you and give you the QNH and which runway is in use. That's fine. Um, right, currently at the Pan and Air hangar, two persons on board, pilot in command, Tamer or Dr. Tamer, and we're ready. Task will be traffic pattern and ready to taxi. Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra, Roger. Runway news, runway 32, QNH 1013, Gulf 1 to the Gulf Bay is free. Gulf 1 to Gulf Bay is free, Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra. That's it. That's your hint that Gulf 1 is free and you can start your taxi procedures. At that point, we go ahead now and note the time. We don't have a taxi light. We're going to release the brakes now. Okay, and this is the brakes right here. We're going to go ahead and release the brakes and start the taxi. Move the plane and stop. Check the brakes. Okay, we're good. And we're going to do our taxi checklist while we taxi. Make sure, now here you go, I'm turning right. Compass is turning, the gyro is turning, the turn indicator is showing, wing towards the turn, ball opposite of the turn. It looks like things are okay. Differential braking is good. And I'll go ahead now and taxi all the way to the Gulf Bay. All right, you can fast forward through this part. It's a little bit boring. It's a long taxiway to get to where we need to get to, but anyways, I'll start explaining the procedures again when we are in the Gulf Bay. I'm going to try to accelerate a little. In the real Gulf 1 taxiway, you're not going to see that many trees on the right or left. You're going to be able to see the runway on your right side. There's not much actually there on the sides, and it's not like the best paved taxiway when you actually see it. Anyways, it actually does a good job. Microsoft Flight Simulator, the guys in Hungary did a good job recreating the buildings and the scenery for Tököl, to be frank, and it's quite impressive. All right, and that's the intersection I mentioned to you earlier. This is Gulf 2 taxiway right here. See another aircraft coming this way, and you can probably obviously hear them on the radio. That's where we stop right here and let them go. And the Gulf Bay is straight ahead in front of us. Here's the Gulf Bay area, and that's the Gulf Bay. All right, and if we are the first aircraft in the Gulf Bay, you try to go to the farthest west, which is the right side from this direction, and you pretty much park the aircraft at an angle facing the wind in order to do your run up, and you get ready for takeoff. All right, so we go to the farthest west right here, and you face this way, and we stop. And if you look on the right, you can see that you can accommodate now another maybe 2 or 3 more aircraft depending on the size right next to you. Okay, it says here now on the checklist, set the parking brakes. Okay, we set the parking brakes. And we continue now. This is called the before takeoff checklist. Parking brake is set, canopy is closed, fuel pressure light is out, as we can see. Fuel quantities checked, and those checked in the pre-flight check, obviously. Circuit breakers are all checked. Okay, they're all in. And transponder is set on alt modes. Is Squawk 7000 for VFR. And flaps, takeoff. Put the flaps for takeoff and verify by looking visually outside, obviously. And the fuel shutoff valve is open. Well, better be. There it is. Fuel shutoff valve is open. Carb heat is off. It's in the off position. Right, and propeller control is full forward. Here's the prop. It is full forward. The trim is neutral, and the trim here is kind of tricky in this aircraft. You got this little pin that you have to pull out and move the trim and then put it back in and stays in place. All right, so that's how we trim the aircraft. Now it's in the takeoff or neutral position. And check if the controls are free. Okay, you check the controls by also looking outside while you're doing everything. Here we go. And you check also the rudders, right? Okay, controls are free. Everything is good here. The altimeter is set, the QNH 1013. We said that already. Trim, and then after that, the directional indicator, you set it, but we don't have to because we have the G5 unit. And now we'll go ahead now and start the engine run-up procedure. Engine run-up procedure, you set the RPM to 1700. So we advance the throttle. To about 1700 RPM. Then you go ahead now and check the magnetos. Here you go, here's a drop, about 150 or less is good. Come back to all. Now 2 clicks left. And come back to all, and we check the carb heat. Here we go, here's a drop. Carb heat off, and then you cycle the propellers 3 times. 1, quickly, 2, and 3. Alright, looks good. Then we bring the RPM back to 1000, and that means our engine run-up is complete and things are looking good. Now to get ready for actual takeoff, we really put the flaps on takeoff position. According to the checklist, the next thing is the fuel pump is on. I turn the fuel pump on, landing light on. Okay, and we go ahead and do the briefing. Okay, the briefing I want you to give me comprises of 4 different parts. It's ANWB, Alpha November Whiskey Bravo, ANWB. Just remember that. A is aircraft status. I want you to talk about if there are any deficiencies or malfunctions with the aircraft, and talk about the fuel status. So that's the Alpha, that's the A part. The N is the NOTAMs. I want you to talk about any relevant NOTAMs that may relate to our flight or pertain to our flight. W is the weather. I want you to describe the weather. I don't need a detailed weather briefing. All I need, obviously, if the skies are clear, skies are clear. I need you to tell me, for example, which runway we expect to take off from, because wind is northerly, from the north, from the south, whatever. And just tell me if there are like CBs in the vicinity or some thunderstorms we're going to have to avoid. Basic, quick, relevant weather briefing. And finally, the briefing itself. And the briefing itself is when you describe the takeoff procedure and what you're going to do in case of any issues before rotation or after rotation with there's usable runway, which there is plenty of in Tököl, to be honest. It's such a wide and long runway. Or if you have a problem after rotation and out of usable. All right, so I'm going to give you an example right now. Okay, this takeoff briefing. Aircraft status is normal. We have sufficient fuel for the task. There are no relevant NOTAMs. Weather is clear. Wind is calm. I will be taking off runway 32. This will be a normal takeoff with flaps takeoff. Rotation speed is 50 knots. Any problems before rotation or after rotation with the usable runway, we're going to cut the throttle, land immediately straight ahead, stop the aircraft, from Tököl radio, and try to taxi back if we can. If not, then obviously we're going to call for help. If it's after rotation, out of usable, we're going to try to turn back if we are at 1,000 feet AGL. If not, we're going to land straight ahead, right or left, maximum about 15 to maybe 20 degrees right or left in order to be able to land. And I will describe where these places or spots are in Tököl. If we have fire, we have to land immediately, no matter what, and evacuate the aircraft immediately. If you have any questions, and that's it. And so ANWB. Right, it looks like good. So briefing is completed, and now we note the takeoff time. And before we release the parking brakes, we're going to call Tököl radio and tell them we're ready. Tököl radio, Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra at the Gulf Bay, ready for departure. Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra, runway 32 is free. Or they're going to tell you, for example, hold short at Gulf, at holding point Gulf, which we know that this is the holding point Gulf right here, because we came at taxiway Gulf 1, and this is Gulf taxiway. Hold short at holding point Gulf, or runway 32 is free. Okay, runway 32 is free, Hotel Alpha Delta Alpha Sierra. Okay, we'll go ahead now, release the brakes. Okay, it looks like it's clear, clear, and we taxi on Gulf taxiway to the runway. All right, here we go. Approach sector is clear, and right side is clear. All right, good. We don't have that many actually trees obstructing the view in the real airport, so it'll be easy to see the approach sector. All right, looks good. Looks like I can see the numbers. Runway 32 is identified, and I'm gonna stop right here and take a pause for a second to describe the traffic pattern.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the traffic pattern runway 32 and also the airspace above Tököl. I want to start off first with the airspace above Tököl airfield. You'll see that we have different training airspaces or training boxes. So right above the airfield, as you can see with the runway dividing these two airspaces is hotel and November. So there's hotel training area, there's November training area as you can see here, and to the south there are three more airspaces that you can train. Sierra 1 right here, and followed by Sierra 2 and Sierra 3, which is centered at Makad. And if we zoom out, you'll see that we are the blue dot right there. That's where we're located on the runway right now. We have Hotel in November up here, then we have Sierra 1, and then we have Sierra 2 and Sierra 3. And I encourage you to go to the Tököl website, take a look at the information that's provided on the official website, and you'll see those airspaces drawn out for you. And I drew them myself over the map of ForeFlight in order to be able to follow the proper borders when I need to train within a specific training box. Alright, and that takes us now to the traffic pattern procedures for runway 32. Okay, so you're going to take off runway 32 that way, okay, and then right when you get to the water, you're going to start turning left that way, right to the crosswind, and when you hit land, you're going to start coming back. You start your turn to the downwind, and the downwind goes all the way here to railroad tracks. There are railroad tracks here if you zoom in, and you will see them in real life, and that's your landmark to turn to base and then final. Alright, so runway 32 to runway track, and don't get pushed too much by the wind because we have another grass runway next to us, and the grass runway is used by gliders, and they use a pattern. Their traffic pattern is on the other side of the runway. So this way we don't want to transgress over their traffic pattern. So you try to stay runway track, don't get pushed to the right. Taking off runway 32. When you get to the Danube, turn left to the crosswind, and then downwind, and then when you hit land here, you're going to turn downwind, and then base at the railroad tracks. Traffic pattern altitude in Tököl now is 1,500 feet. Okay, so pay attention to that. It's 1,500 is the traffic pattern altitude, and this is pretty much the traffic pattern for runway 32. Pay attention that we have restricted areas next to the airport. The chimneys that you saw earlier, they have a restricted area around them, as you can see here, from ground to 1,500. And then from ground to 7,500, we have another restricted area, and that's when you have an oil refinery. So pretty much what you want to do is you want to stay on our side of the Danube, and you'll be good to go. And with that, we're going to go ahead now and start the traffic pattern. Okay, and back again, and we're lined up runway 32, and we've done our before takeoff checklists, everything is good. And we told about Tököl Radio runway 32 is free, and we are going to take off now and do the traffic pattern, left-handed pattern, runway 32. Right. So 3 call outs when you during the takeoff procedure, ground roll, is takeoff power set. So you're gonna increase the throttle to full power, and you keep your hands on it in case you need to reject for any problems. Uh, and then the second call out is the airspeed alive when it's alive, and the third call out is engine instruments are all green when they are indeed obviously green. Anything violated of those 3 things or any other big problem, just like we briefed, we're gonna go idle and we're gonna stop on the running. So with that, let's go ahead and do this. All right, takeoff power set, airspeed alive, engine instruments all green. Wait for 51 to 55 knots to rotate. Here we go at 51. You can stop pulling on the stick a little and the aircraft is going to fly. Right, there's no need to pitch down or anything to increase the speed like you do probably with a Cessna. It's going to increase to 65. The next thing we want to do is wait until 200 feet AGL, which is approximately 500 MSL, as you see on the altimeter. And then in that case, I'm going to retract the flaps, fuel pump off, landing light off, and bring back the manifold pressure of the throttle just a little tad to 28, and bring back the RPM of the prop just a little bit to the edge of the green. That's it. And you keep climbing with 65 knots. .65 to 70 is good, and our target altitude is 1,500. Once we get to the Danube, to the water, that's when we're going to start turning left to the crosswind. Almost over the water. And here we are, pretty much over the water. We're going to start turning to the crosswind. Okay, 1,500 is here. Pitch down, maintain 1,500. Increase the speed above. Here we go. That's good. Above 80 knots. And then it reduced the manifold pressure to 23. And RPM to 2,000. Okay, and looking good. And we look back here. Here's the runway. Good crosswind. And we hit land. And then we start turning now to the downwind. Try to maintain 1,500. Sometimes on hot days, folks, when it gets really hot, we want to maintain manifold pressure of 25 instead of 23, depending on the weather. Try to maintain 1,500 and turn now to the downwind. Here we go. It's a good downwind right here. And looking at the runway on my left. And if you look on the right, you'll see those chimneys we talked about, the restricted area right there. So try to maintain 1,500, trim your plane. Check the engine instruments now and the fuel status. This is a good time to do so while you are on the downwind. And try to maintain parallel to the runway and maintain 1,500. Okay, when I am abeam the threshold, which is right here, this is the displaced threshold for the touch and go. It's at alpha 2. I'm going to make my call. I'm going to turn the fuel pump on, landing light on, make my radio call. And then after the radio call, if everything is good and I'm going to continue with the normal traffic pattern, I don't need to extend anything. I'm going to go carb heat on, throttle idle, prop full forward. Okay, 1,500. Here you go. And looks like we're good here. Almost there. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the fuel pump on, the landing light on, just not to climb, be careful. And I'm going to make my call. Tököl Radio, Hotel Alpha Delta Sierra, ready for left base, runway 32, touch and go. Hotel Alpha Delta Sierra, runway 32 is free. Runway 32 is free, Hotel Alpha Delta Sierra. In that case, I'm going to do carb heat on. Okay, throttle idle. And prop full forward. And I'm going to maintain my altitude until the speed goes down to 70 knots. So maintain your altitude, try not to descend. And now I'm pretty much almost over the railroad tracks. Here we go, and then I'm gonna start turning now and pitch down for 70 knots. It's really hard in the sim, but you do your best. Turning now base. And on base, here I am. I'm gonna go now speed check, first notch of flaps. And coming down on base, try to trim the plane for 70 knots. And now I look on my left, here's the runway, and it's now turning final. And I'm a little high, so I'm gonna go full flaps and pitch for 70 knots. Landing checklist, fuel pump on, landing light on. Now carb heat is off. And flaps as needed. Flaps landing right now. Throttle idle. For power as needed. Profile forward and runway is free. Landing checklist complete. This aircraft doesn't want to descend if you go faster than 70 knots. It's insane when I have full flaps. And runway is free. Okay, good. Landing checklist completed. We pitch for 70. You got to touch down after the displaced threshold. And when we're on the ground, what am I going to do? I'm going to bring the flaps back to takeoff position. Check that the carb heat is off. And check the engine is all green as I accelerate. And don't forget right rudder when you accelerate. Okay, here we go. And we get ready now for close to the ground. Count about 3 seconds or so. Let it come down and then flare. Don't balloon. It's really hard in the sim. There's no feel at all. Okay, here we go. Good. We're going to bring the flaps up 1 notch to take off. And looks like everything is good. Here we go. Full throttle. Right rudder. 51 to 55. And rotate. Here we go. And we go again. Let the aircraft accelerate to 65 knots. Try straight over the runway surface. Very good. 65 knots and climbing. – 200 feet AGL, about 500 MSL, as you can see on the altitude altimeter. Flaps up, fuel pump off, landing light off. Bring back the manifold pressure to a little bit, 28, and the RPM to the edge of the green. And keep climbing west, 65. Alright, so we continue up until the Danube River. Try to pitch for 65 to 70. I'm almost over the water. Alright, and here I am reaching the water, and I'm going to start turning now to the crosswind, facing that dense green area, as you can see. Here you go, that's good enough, and keep climbing. If you look on the left, here's the runway, beautiful. That's a nice crosswind. Attaining 65 knots to 1,500. Okay, approaching 1,500, here we go. And now when you reach pretty much over land on the other side of the Danube, that's when you turn to the downwind. Right, approaching 1,500. And now you pitch down and maintain the altitude. And increase the speed over 80 knots, then reduce manifold pressure to 23 and 2,000 on the RPM. And just remember, sometimes it's 25 instead of 23 on the manifold pressure, depending on the weather for that day. You might need more power. It's hot and humid in the summer, so it gets pretty difficult. Maintain 1,500. Again, downwind. This is the time for you to check your instruments. Everything is in the green. We got good fuel. Everything is good. And the next one will be a full stop landing. Alright, just like we said, when we're ABM that threshold here, that's when we're gonna put fuel pump on, landing light on, make the radio call, and then I'll do 3 things on the bottom: carb heat on, throttle idle, and propeller full forward. Okay, it looks like I'm good now. Here we go. So I'm gonna do now fuel pump on, not climb, fuel pump on, and landing light on. And Tököl radio, Tel Aviv Delta Sierra, ready for left base, runway 32, full stop. Tel Aviv Delta Sierra, runway 32 is free. Runway 32 is free, Tel Aviv Delta Sierra, okay? In that case, throttle idle, prop full forward. And don't forget the carb heat on. And maintain your altitude until the speed goes to 70 knots. And we're not going to turn base until the railroad tracks. In the real plane, you'll be able to see the railroad tracks easily. Okay, maintain 70 knots. Waiting for 70, waiting for 70, and then, okay, I'm over the railroad tracks now. Then I'm going to start turning to base. And since I'm making a full stop, it's a good idea, instead of just doing flaps takeoff on base, is to go full flaps, since we're going to touch down, as I told you, at the beginning of the runway, not at the displaced threshold as before. Alright, so now I am on base. I can see just trying to maintain 70 knots, and here's the runway. Things are good, 70 knots and coming down. Right, landing checklist, fuel pump on, landing light on, flaps landing, power as needed, carb heat now I'm going to turn it off so I don't forget, and profile forward and runway is free. Okay, we're gonna turn now, final. This looks like we're gonna overshoot a little maybe. Now we're good, here we go, not too bad. Again, in the sim, it's very hard to get a sense of looking around. It's not VR. So maintain 70 knots. We're going to touch down now in the beginning. We don't need to touch down at the displaced threshold. We can touch down anywhere before the displaced threshold. Bring it down 70 knots, pitch for 70, and throttle is for altitude. As you can see here, I'm just going to try to pitch for 70 knots. This aircraft is very, it's like a glider. It doesn't want to come down if the speed is higher than 70. Okay, bringing it down, bringing it down. And height of a person, and wait here. Let the plane come down, and then you start the flare. Okay, here we go. And we stop, we start, we don't have to brake hard or anything, just let the aircraft, it's a big runway, it's really long. And there are 3 things I need to do while I am on the runway after landing, okay? The fuel pump is off, and bring the flaps up, and bring the transponder to standby, and request backtrack. Hotel Delta Officer, request backtrack. Backtrack approved, backtrack approved to Hotel Delta Officer. Alright, so you might be asked to exit the runway at Alpha 2 if there's another aircraft right behind you. Make sure you turn from your side. If you're sitting in the left seat, make the turn from your side. If you're sitting in the right seat as an instructor, obviously, or yes, in that case, you can turn back from the right side. It's just a good habit when future training, when you become a jet pilot as a first officer sitting in the right seat, you're going to turn from the right if you're the pilot flying, etc. Okay, so now we taxi back. We might be asked, like I said before, to exit the runway at Alpha 2 if there's another aircraft is coming behind us. If not, then that's it, and then you are going to taxi back to exit until you exit the runway. We're backtracking runway 32. With that, I mean, when you exit the runway, what you need to do is turn the landing light off, and then inform Tököl radio that you are ready to taxi to the main hangars. Okay, transponder is a standby, and we go. And that's it, and we exit the runway. This is Alpha 2 on the right. Sometimes we're asked to vacate here or wait here at the Alpha 2 bay for until another aircraft lands, and then we can continue our backtrack. Or sometimes we're asked to taxi Alpha 2, Alpha 1. Alright, so now we're going to exit the runway. Then after that, we're going to discuss the traffic pattern procedures for runway 14. Now we're back again, and we are going to assume that we are at the Gulf Bay. We've done everything, we're ready to go, and we are going to depart today. I would do the traffic pattern for runway 14. And in that case, there are several scenarios we need to discuss, because you can either be asked to, and I'm going to explain this right now on the map, Okay, so you can be asked to do one of the following scenarios if you're departing runway 14. So runway 14 is this way, correct? So you can either be asked to backtrack on 4, so you go this way and then you backtrack and turn around for you and get ready for your departure. Or you could be asked to taxi via Alpha 1, this is Alpha 1, then Alpha 2, and then you hold short here, and then you'll be asked to enter the runway from Alpha 2 and backtrack this little part, this part right here to get ready. So two scenarios here. Either you're going to backtrack on the runway if there's not not much traffic that day or whatever, so it's free, or you might be asked to cross the runway here from Gulf. Remember, this is Gulf holding point and Gulf taxiway, and this is Alpha 1. So you go Gulf, Alpha 1, Alpha 2, and you wait here. And when you're ready, or the Tököl radio tells you that the runway is free to enter and backtrack, you can enter and backtrack that part and then come back and face this way. Okay, so and then now I'm going to talk again a little bit about now the runway 14 departure procedure. It's a little tricky for noise abatement, and I'm going to explain what happens here. Again, traffic pattern is 1,500. Okay, nothing changes here. So you're going to take off runway 14. Most likely, you're going to start from as far as here. That's where the displaced threshold for runway 14 is. It's pretty much next to Alpha 3. Okay, and you're going to take off this way. You're going to be airborne way before the end of the runway. And when you hit here, the end of the runway, you need to make an immediate right turn this way, like this. So an immediate right turn that way. And then after that, right before this village right here, you're going to turn to the downwind. And you continue on the downwind, right? And just like we did before, you hit when you are A-beam the threshold, which is right here. That's when you're gonna do fuel pump on, landing light on, your stuff, and make your call. And then once you get pretty much over the water to the land, okay, once you hit land, that's when you turn base, okay, that way. And when you turn base that way, you're gonna see that you're facing, remember the antenna we talked about here, there's an antenna. And let me see if I can show it here as one of the obstacles. Let me see obstacles. Yeah, here's the antenna. As you can see, this antenna right here. You're going to be facing between the antenna and there's a bridge. And here's a bridge. So you're going to be somehow looking between the two. The antenna and the bridge, that's a good base. And then final. And don't forget the threshold is completely displaced on runway 14 to right after Alpha 3. Okay, this is Alpha 3, so here. So you can touch down after here. All right, touching down anywhere here after Alpha 3 is fine, considering you're going to do a touch and go. But if you're going to do a full stop landing, out of courtesy, if you have another traffic behind you, you might want to touch down somewhere here, a little bit farther down. It's a very, very long runway, so you don't taxi for such a long time. Make it a long landing. And from Tököl radio that you want to do a long landing, you can touch down between Alpha 2 then Alpha 3. And this is obviously Alpha 1 as we discussed before. Okay, and with that, we're going to go ahead now into the runway and we will backtrack and I will see you when we lined up runway 14 for the traffic pattern procedure, runway 14. Alright folks, we're back again and as you can see here, we're lined up now runway 14, that's the opposite direction, okay? And you can see we're pretty much, this is Alpha 1, this is Alpha 2, and pretty much close to Alpha 3. There's a displaced threshold clearly marked. You're not going to miss that. And just like I discussed with you before, the traffic pattern procedure is going to be like, this is the ground roll, you're going to climb. Once you are over the threshold, you're going to brake right, okay? And you're going to brake right, okay, to that way, avoiding this town and avoiding this town. So there's an empty space right here, as you can see. Okay, and that's when you're going to turn that way. You're going to brake right until here, and you're going to turn to your downwind. And the downwind is, as usual, is right here. You're going to fly the downwind, and then when you cross the Danube, okay, to the dense area, right on land, you're going to turn base, and then you're going to come here for final, etc. to land. Okay, and that's when you are facing between that antenna and the bridge right there. You're going to be facing somewhere in between. Okay, and that would be the traffic pattern procedure for runway 14. I'm going to illustrate for you right now. I'm going to do one touch and go and one full stop. Here we are and down here, and we're lined up runway 14. let's go ahead now and lined up 14. We're gonna call Tököl Radio and tell them we're ready. Tököl Radio, takeoff Delta Sierra, lined up runway 14, ready for departure. Takeoff Delta Sierra, runway 14 is free. Runway 14 is free, takeoff Delta Sierra. All right, hands on the throttle, and we go full power. Right rudder, takeoff power set, airspeed alive, engine instruments all green. Okay, approaching the rotation speed. Here we go, 51 to 55. Ease up on the stick. The aircraft is going to fly. Right leg aircraft is going to accelerate. And like we said, once we are over the threshold, the beginning of the runway, we're going to brake right, okay? So I'm climbing right now. As you can see, plenty of space. I'm still over the runway. I'm not there yet. And here I am, reaching over, almost over the threshold. So I'm going to brake now right, like we said, and I'm at over 500. Okay, flaps up, and fuel pump off, and landing light off, and bring back the power just a notch, and bring back the RPM to the edge of the green. Don't forget to pitch for 65, and we brake in right, avoiding all the villages or the towns. Alright, so here we are. It's really hard to see looking outside from the sim, but you'll see it clearly as you get close to those two villages. And now I'm going to start turning to my downwind, avoiding all the towns. As you can see, 65 knots. And here's my downwind. A little bit to the right, out to the right. You keep climbing to 1,500, and look, it's a good downwind. Right, 1,500. You're gonna level off. Wait till I accelerate over 80 knots. Here we go. Speed is good. I'm gonna bring back this to 23, and RPM to 2,000, and try to maintain my altitude 1,500. Okay, here we go. We're good. Here the chimneys are on the left. The runway is on the right. I don't want to go away from the runway. Just correcting, and try to correct for the altitude again. Here we go. This is good. And that's the dense green area we discussed before that I need to get to it. Okay, so now I'm A-beam, so I'm going to go fuel pump on, landing light on. Tököl Radio, takeoff Delta Sierra, ready for right base, runway 14, touch and go. Takeoff Delta Sierra, runway 14 is free. Runway 14 is free, takeoff Delta Sierra. In that case, carb heat on, throttle idle, profile forward, maintain altitude until the speed goes to 70 knots. And I'm almost over the other side of the Danube, so right when I hit land, that's when I'm going to turn to my base. Okay, pretty much over the land now. I'm going to start turning now. Here we go. Turning base, maintaining 70 knots, pitching down. And the base, you're going to find yourself like actually facing between the antenna and the bridge on a good base. Here we go. Here's the antenna. And there will be a bridge right there, and you're going to be facing in between. Here you go. First notch of flaps. Maintaining 70 knots. That's a good base. And there's the runway. Remember, the runway has a displaced threshold. Here it's not really that accurate in the simulator, to be honest with you. In real life, the threshold is displaced right up to alpha 3. Okay, so I'm going to start turning final now. And you'll see that at alpha 3 you can actually touch down. Here it's a little bit pushed a little bit farther. So in real life you'll see that the runway displaced is to here, to alpha 3. But here it's a little bit pushed a little farther. Not a problem. Actually, it's a good thing to here. Okay, I'll go full flaps and good landing checklist. Fuel pump on, landing light on, flaps landing, carb heat off. You can turn the carb heat off now. And power as needed. Runway is free, profile forward, runway is free, landing checklist complete. Pitching for 70 knots. And like I said, in real life, you'll be able to see that the threshold, you can touch down after here, but you got a long distance. Here's a little bit pushed a little bit farther ahead, so it's okay. We can touch down a little farther ahead between alpha 2 and alpha 3. That's no problem. That's actually a good thing, because this way, even when we taxi later, if it's a full stop, it's not going to be an issue. Okay, I'll give it a little power to maintain 70 knots until the displaced threshold. And here's the displaced threshold, idle, and bring it down. Okay, good. Flaps, bring it back to flaps takeoff and full throttle. Engine instrument all green and 51 and rotate again. Okay, here we go. Again, we're going to pitch for 65. And right when at the end of the runway, I'm going to brake right like we discussed before. Almost there. Here we go. At the end of the runway, I'm going to brake now right, 500. Retract the flaps and fuel pump off, landing light off, and bring back just a manifold pressure just a tad and the prop to the edge of the green. And keep climbing, avoiding these towns next to, don't forget the speed, 65. And here we are. And almost at the corner between these two towns, I'm still flying over the empty space, this town and that town. And I'm going to start turning my downwind. Climbing 1,500. And here's the dense area of the Danube. That's the one I need to face for a good downwind visually. Gonna be good to go. Here he goes. 65 to 70 is good. And level off now, 1,500. And wait for the speed to go above 80 knots. Good. In that case, I'll bring now, wait a little bit. Don't climb. And bring back this to 23. The manifold pressure of the throttle. Bring back the RPM to 2,000. And maintain 1,500. Okay, we don't want to go out. Stay, go to that green area. Don't let the wind push you. And here you go. That's a good downwind. Maintain 1,500. Okay, I'm pretty much like A-beam. The displaced threshold, I'm going to turn the fuel pump on. The landing light on, I'm going to make my call. Tököl radio, tell off the TFCR, ready for right base, runway 14, full stop. Tell off the TFCR, runway 143, wind is calm. 143, you tell off the TFCR. Alright, in that case, carb heat on. Throttle idle. Prop full forward. And maintain 1,500 until the speed goes to 70 knots. And I'm waiting to cross the Danube until the other side to the land, and then I'm going to turn base. Maintaining 1,500 as much as I can until the speed goes to 70. Here we go. He's 70. He's going to start pitching down now for 70 knots. Alright, pretty much over land now. I'm going to start turning to base, and I'm going to be facing between the antenna and the bridge across the Danube. So 70 knots I'm pitching right here. Here we go. Here's the antenna, and a bridge will be right there, and just face between them, and that will be a very good base for you. Right, I'm going to keep coming down with 70 knots. Now here I will do first notch of flaps on base. Keeping an eye on the runway. We're good. Everything is visual. Look outside. And then we start our turn to final. Pitching for 70. Nice shallow turn. Go. Now on final landing checklist, fuel pump on, landing light on. Flaps as needed. Carb heat off. And prop full forward, runway is free, landing checklist complete. Okay, and this time I'm going to make it maybe flaps takeoff. If I'm still high, I'm going to go with a higher notch of flaps. Again, if it's a full stop, it's advisable to do a long landing because you're going to exit all the way at the end at Gulf Taxiway. Okay, I think we're a little high now. We can go now higher notch of flaps and pitch for 70. You're going to exit all the way to the left at the Gulf Taxiway to taxi back on Gulf 1 to the hangar. So that's why it's important. Okay, I'm 70 knots. That's a little bit power till the displaced threshold. Oh, here we go. Okay, and we touch down. And three things to do on the runway after touching down is that you turn the fuel pump off and put the flaps up and put the transponder on standby. That's it. Nothing else to do until you exit the runway. And then when you exit the runway, we're going to turn the landing light off. We're going to call that the runway is vacated so that we pretty much tell Tököl radio that we want to taxi to the main hangar. You know that, so they're going to let us know if Gulf 1 is free or not. This is Alpha 2 taxiway. Sometimes you might be asked to vacate via Alpha 2 if there's an aircraft right behind you. That's fine. In that case, you will vacate at Alpha 2 right back there. That's no problem. And wait, or maybe you can do Alpha 2, Alpha 1. Pair the layout I explained to you earlier, and then you can cross the runway after asking Tököl radio to cross the runway at the threshold of 3-2 into Gulf and then Gulf 1. Okay, so you'll be coming from the right here, and this is Alpha 1. You would hold here until you're told you can cross the runway. Runway's free to cross. You can cross and come back this way if somebody's right behind you. Okay, so here we go, and then we're going to exit to the left, and we exit here. And the first thing to do when you exit is you're going to turn now the landing light off. When you vacate the runway, you're going to call Tököl radio. Tell off Delta Alpha Sierra, runway vacated. Tell off Delta Alpha Sierra, Gulf 1 is free. Gulf 1 is free, tell off Delta Alpha Sierra. And that's it. And we're going to go now and taxi via Gulf 1 back to the main hangar again. And we got pretty much the information from Tököl radio that Gulf 1 is free because, like I said, it accommodates one aircraft at a time. And in that case, we have to make sure it's free, that we can enter it in taxi so we don't actually face another aircraft head on and then we're stuck. Okay, here's Gulf 1 and this is Gulf 2 on the left. This is Gulf 1 and we taxi back to the main hangar and see you at the main hangar.
Okay, and here we are going back, and Pioneer hangar is right there. And park the aircraft in the same pattern that you can see here, like they face each other. And we usually, if the guy is the mechanic that works on the hangar, tells you where to park, you just follow his guidance. If not, we just park in parallel next to these other aircraft. We don't have to pull the aircraft out of the hangar or put it back in. It's not our job. They take care of that themselves. There are actually a line to follow here with the nose wheel that guides you to park the aircraft. It's not here in the sim, obviously, but it's actually there. All right, and that's it. And all right, we go ahead now and set the parking brakes. Parking brakes are set, and we try now to minimize all the electrical loading, except for obviously the ACL light. So I only have the ACL light on right now, so I'm gonna turn the avionics off. All right, make sure obviously the carb heat is off, radio off if I need to turn the radios off, or the avionics, if it's not just an avionics bus. And then I go ahead and shut down the engine. And after I shut down the engine, ACL light off, and the master off, and that should be it. And this is how the aircraft are parked by the hangar, and depending on whichever the first free position is, that's where you're gonna actually park the aircraft. This is a shutdown procedure, and make sure you write down now the time, the block time, and fill out the paperwork, which I'm going to show you how to do. Quite simple, and that's it.